Welcome to Aspects of Writing with your host, James Kelly. For the next 60 minutes, we'll explore every aspect of writing, including how to create, format, and even sell your work. The phone lines are open at 731-1230. That's 731-1230. Or toll free, 1-866-820-KLAV. Now, let's get writing. Here's your host, James Kelly.
Hello and welcome to Aspects of Writing. I'm your host, James Kelly. The topic of today's show is writing for television and movies, and boy, do we have a great cast for that. In this studio today, we have Judy McFadden, author of Life with Macduff. We have Don Lewis Barnhart, who's been a director, author, producer, and script writer. And then joining us on the phone from Rhode Island is Bobby Vigeant. He's an actor, producer, writer, director, and entrepreneur. And from Hollywood, we have Jocelyn Towne, producer, director, script writer, and actor. If you are just tuning in, you're listening to Aspects of Writing with me, your host, James Kelly, here on KLAV 1230 AM on the dial. Today we're going to do things a little differently. Instead of fun facts and quotes first, I'd like to introduce my guests and let them tell you a little bit about themselves. So, Judy, why don't you go first?
Well, at the risk of being zapped by your guest to my right, I'm a coal miner's daughter.
And I'm a coal miner.
I was born and raised in southwest Pennsylvania, and I'm an author, as James said, of Life with Macduff, Lessons Learned from a Therapy Dog, about my 9-year journey with a mystical, stubborn, and hilarious Scottish Terrier therapy dog, and the lives he touched during his lifetime and even after his death. I have just found out from Chicken Soup for the Soul a story that I submitted entitled The Pill War, about trying to give Macduff pills that's been accepted and should be published in September in Chicken Soup for the Soul. I can't believe my dog did that.
Well, one of the things I'd like to point out about Judy is if you go to prweb.com, Judy McFadden's Therapy Dog Story wins an Angel Animal Network contest.
Yes,
all
that's
right.
right.
And it says, and I quote, author Judy McFadden wrote a contest-winning story using experiences from her book, Life with Macduff, Lessons Learned from a Therapy Dog, to tell the world about her 9-year-old journey with her extraordinary Scottish Terrier therapy dog. She motivates and encourages dog lovers, especially seniors, retirees, and baby boomers, to volunteer in the therapy dog and animal-assisted reading programs. Through her book, she connects with animal lovers all over the world who experience a spiritual connection and receive healing and unconditional love from their animals. And Don, I know you can relate to that, being a dog lover yourself.
Oh, yeah. Well, I got a dog named Jack. He sleeps with me, and he's my pal and my buddy. Yes, I can relate to the dog. I heard somebody laugh when Judy was speaking. Was that you, Bobby?
Yes, it is.
Well, you know, I kind of heard you laughing in the background there, and I thought that's terrific, since we are one of the same in our choices of work. So.
Yes, that's great.
Bobby, why don't you tell us just a bit about yourself and your background?
Okay, well, I do a lot of different things. My main thrust is in the acting industry. I've done some projects over the last couple of years that are starting to come around into the public eye right now. And my first film I did in 2010 is called Law and Disorder, out of Washington, D.C. It's based on a law firm and a guy named John Isaac, who's the executive director of a law firm, that dies and becomes a ghost because he's not allowed to enter heaven until he can earn good deed points for abusing his former employees. It won the Parade Lawrence International Film Festival as Best Feature Film, and has just been nominated for 8 awards in the 2012 International Music and Film Festival. And I was actually nominated my first time for Best Actor Award, which will be judged in August. I also have a project that's being marketed in the industry right now. It's called The Life Coach, with an all Rhode Island cast that I have some involvement in writing and developing the project. I also act in it. And I just finished a film in Hollywood out in the Palmdale Desert called Dirty Gun with a gentleman named Nick Byron and Matt Davino. I play a character named Lieutenant Baby Killer, and I co-star alongside legendary film director Oliver Stone's son, Michael Stone, another actor named Ryan Golembeski, and one other, Derek Weston. That film is just being marketed and is in the comedy genre also. and we have a couple other projects that we have going on.
It's just too bad you're not busy, Bobby.
Yes, well, I also, besides this, own my own lifestyle, which is called the VIG lifestyle. It stands for the very important guy or the very important girl. It's a health, fitness, and life wellness online project that I own. It's got a clothing line. I have innovative new nutritional training products. I send people 6 text messages a day to their phone, and I have a whole video web series there that I write and produce myself. So enough about me. Let's talk about you.
Well, I would like to say this. I know, yeah, Bob, yeah. I know.
Is
a
there
little
any
bit
time left?
I would like to say that you. I'm going to give a little bit of your background as well, Bobby. You have 2 brothers and a sister, and your father died when you were 6. And you grew up an athlete. You studied acting in high school as well as with various theatrical groups in Rhode Island. You taught ballroom dancing and martial arts. And in addition to being a nutritionist and personal trainer, you were a home builder and you were in real estate for our marketing for a few years. And the reason I'm saying all this is, how has all of this prepared you for what you feel is an impact on your career, or has this been an impact on your career as an actor, writer, and producer?
Well, I guess maybe all people that are involved in writing, whether it's for film or television, feel that the experiences that they've gone through in life, they actually draw from when they're being creative. The creative aspect of writing comes from a lot of life experience. So with that being said, I've thrust myself into a lot of different things that give me hopefully a well-rounded outlook on what I'm trying to write when I am creating projects. And,
all right.
we just kind of hope that we level out somewhere with that.
All right. And now we're going to move on to Jocelyn. Jocelyn, it's your turn. What is your background, and what have you been up to lately?
I was born and raised in LA, and I still live here. And my interest was in acting originally, and I studied it for many years, and I'm more of a classical theater background. And about 6 years ago, I started writing a screenplay because I wanted to give myself an opportunity to act in something, give myself a job, basically. So I started writing a script called IMI, and it took me about 3 years to write it, to get out, a draft that I was comfortable sharing with people, and tried to get it made for a couple of years with myself to star in it, and then also to be the director. And as a first-time director and as an actor whose work no one had seen, it was very difficult to get financing for it. And at a certain point, I decided that if I was going to make anything happen, I would have to do it myself. And so I turned to crowdfunding and Kickstarter to raise money and financing for the film. And we were able to raise enough money to make the movie, and we did that last summer at this time. And now we're in post-production on the film.
Well,
congratulations!
Yeah,
thank you.
Great.
And I would
Very
also
creative.
Thank you.
I would like to say congratulations also to both you and your husband Simon on the birth of your little child, Adeline,
Thank you.
born May 8th.
Thank you.
Very nice.
So she's a Taurus, just like me.
Oh, good. Yeah.
You might be in trouble there.
That's trouble.
I know a little bit about your background. You have been a personal assistant, an actor, a stand-in, a script reader, and a script supervisor, and now you're a producer. And I think it goes without saying that you're living your dream. And growing up in Hollywood, what was that like for you?
It didn't strike me as something particular or strange or anything like that. I remember just going to restaurants, and my dad is a very sociable person, and he would always ask the waiters what else they were pursuing, and I remember always hearing that they were pursuing acting. So that's a very ingrained memory for me, to know that so many people were always, pursuing this dream.
So it's the norm.
But otherwise, it is. Yeah, I mean, everyone here is not everyone, but a lot of people here are pursuing their dreams, and I think that's one of the amazing things about Los Angeles is it takes a lot of you get a lot of people who have a lot of guts to leave their hometown and come over here and go for their
true.
go to make their dreams come true. So there's a lot of dreamers here.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things I'd like to bring up too is IMI, and IMI is the story of a young woman, Rachel, and that's the character you portray, who meets the father she never knew, Gene. And at her, I believe she meets him at her mother's funeral, and Rachel pretends to be her mother, Sarah, in order to get to know her father, who she did not know. And how does, I think it's pronounced, Korsakoff's syndrome, it's a form of retrograde amnesia, play into the role of the movie?
It's called Korsakoff syndrome.
Oh, Korsakoff's, okay.
It was really, I had come up with the idea for the story without knowing about this particular disease, and I created it, so I created the whole story. And then when I was further researching just mental illness, I found this particular disease which affects short-term memory. So the father character, he is in his 60s, and yet he only has his memory up until he was about 33 years old. So he doesn't remember anything past the age of 33, so he believes himself to still be 33. And it's an actual
condition
which affects people, and it is sometimes curable, but not always. So I found it. We actually took out any reference to it in the actual movie because we realized we didn't need to name it for it to feel like a very true and universal condition that that the audience could relate to. So we took out the name of it because we didn't think we needed it.
Right. I just found this was an interesting take on the movie in the sense that you're having the daughter play the part of the mother to the father whom she never met. So that's kind of an interesting storyline. We're going to move on to Dawn. And Dawn, if it's okay with you, I'm going to introduce you and talk a little bit about who you are.
Well, that's okay with me, except I forgot who I was.
Because of
Jocelyn. Yeah, thank you very much, dear. You brought up something that now I wonder who I am at all. I'm sitting here. I don't know. What day is it? What day is it?
But you're only 33, though. That's the upside.
But I'm always 33, and that's my waist size. So,
Okay. All right. You tell me when I'm wrong. I'm going to start with this.
Okay.
All right. You were born and raised in San Fernando Valley, California.
That's right.
Your earlier career was in radio for about 10 years as a DJ.
Yeah.
All right. You wrote cue cards for Lawrence Welk and worked with Carol Burnett and Robert Blake.
Yep.
Okay. But it was while you were working on the set with Mork and Mindy as a crew member that you got your big break, because I believe, as the story goes, Gary Marshall made you a deal that if you could go out and get credit as a director, he would let you direct an episode of Mork and Mindy?
That is correct. And he was one of the very few people in the entire industry that I found that actually did what he said he was going to do.
God bless him.
Yeah. It was an amazing time. I went to him, and he was surrounded by all of his people, associate producers and editors and so forth. He was going from studio to studio at Paramount. And what happened was he was doing Happy Days, Laverne and Shirley, Mork and Mindy, and a couple of others. And so I just kind of walked in between this entourage of his people, because they would go from one studio to the other studio to see the progressive rehearsals and shooting. So I walked up to him and I said, Mr. What was his name again?
Marshall.
Thank you. I'm 33. I went to
right on cue.
I went to him and I said, "Sir, I would really like to direct. I've been working on Mork and Mindy. I worked in videotape for a ton of years, and I'm ready to do it." And he says, "Well, you're a second assistant, and quite honestly, I can't do a thing for you. But if you go out and get yourself, as James said, get myself a job and come back, we'll talk." So I went over to Benson. And I made a deal to associate direct 5 shows and direct the last one for that season. And I came back with a tape in my hand, and I walked into his office, and I said, "Here it is." And he looked at it, and his mouth fell open because he knew he was up against the wall. And he had to either put up or shut up, and he put up. And then eventually, they put me back as a first assistant, and then I worked my way into directing a few of the Mork and Mindy episodes. I'm the only guy, I believe, that's still alive.
A fantastic job you did, I might say.
Well, thank you. But I'm the only guy that actually had the opportunity to direct Robin Williams and Jonathan Winters at the same time. Boy, talk about a hoot.
That's beautiful.
Well, you directed Benson, you've directed Full House, but you pretty much directed almost every single episode of Saved by the Bell, over 200 episodes.
Over 200 episodes, yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah, and you have written 4 novels in addition to that. And let's see, is there anything I'm leaving out?
Well, the only thing that since we're talking about screenwriting, that's the emphasis of the show, I guess. I wrote 5 screenplays, and none of which sold. And they're all looking, they're all looking for, the latest blow up picture. And so I had these 5 screenplays sitting there, and I'm thinking, wait a minute, why don't I turn those into novels? And so I sat down and went from screenplay to screenplay to screenplay to screenplay, and turned out 400 plus pages of novels, and which I'm trying to sell, Bobby. And you can probably understand some of my my trepidation in that, because it's very hard to sell no matter where you are.
Yep,
and but one screenplay, and this is the exciting part, I think. One screenplay seemed to work. And stayed as a screenplay. I didn't make a book out of it. And right now, 7 years later, after the recession and downturn of the economy and whatever, my partner and I, a fellow by the name of Skip Burrows, he and I have trying to produce this thing, and we finally got it to some people who actually have some money, and they say they want to do it. They like the screenplay. The budget's fine. It's not overly over the top. And we think we can do it here in Las Vegas sometime at the end of the year.
So
that's great. And if you need any good actors, just call me up.
You got Bobby and Jocelyn right there.
Bobby and Jocelyn.
Points on the back end.
You guys are so hustling. You're finding a director now that you're hustling me on the air.
Listen, you got the whole crew. You got the writers, the directors, the producers. You've got everyone.
I'll be an extra if you need extra.
See, we got Judy there, right there.
I'll write in some things for dogs.
Yes.
And there's one thing we left out, Don, that you're doing.
I was arrested?
Well, that's in a future episode. And you're currently the host of Bring It On with Barnhart here on KLAV.
Yes, and because of you.
Well, don't blame me.
No, I'll blame you. You got me on the air to a show much like this, Aspects of Writing, and talking about screenplays and stuff like that. Judy McFadden was here at the same time, and we became the yin and yang.
They are the yin and yang
of your show.
That's right.
And after that show was over with, I went around nosing around, bumping into doors, and I found Al Vincetti, who is like the CEO or
general manager.
Thank you. And
he might want to be the CEO.
Well,
maybe he is.
Well, maybe he is. And talked to him and signed up, and now I'm on the air. So there you go.
It's fantastic.
All right. Well, you're listening to Aspects of Writing with me, your host, James Kelly, right here on KLAV in Las Vegas, Nevada. My guests today are Jocelyn Towne, Don Lewis Barnhart, Bobby Vigeant, and Judy McFadden. Say that again, Bobby?
Bobby Vigeant.
Vigeant. Okay.
I used to drive a Vigeant.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. I mean, it was a hot little number, man.
Do you want to be a VIG?
That's his slogan, by the way.
Do you want to be a VIG? That's
He's
his
not
slogan.
joking.
That's my VIGlifestyle.com.
All right, we're going to do a few fun quotes and facts right now. And Jocelyn, would you like to take the first one?
Sure. My quote is from Paul Newman, who once said, "Every time I get a script, it's a matter of trying to know what I could do with it. I see colors, imagery. It has to have a smell. It's like falling in love. You can't give a reason why."
So how does everyone feel about that quote?
It's pretty good.
It's very poetic.
Yeah.
But that's the way he
I
is.
I fell in love with listening to that.
He's pretty colorful guy.
Are you married? No. No, actually, it is. It's very creative, and if you look at it in an artistic light.
Well, Bobby, I'm going to ask you to read quote number 2.
Okay. Robert Downey Jr. is quoted as having said, "When you have a good script, you're almost in more trouble than when you have a terrible script. With the terrible script, you hustle and try to make it better. But with the good script, it can be trouble because you rest on your laurels, so to speak, because you think it's going to translate easily to the audience."
And how does everyone feel about that quote? Jocelyn?
Well, I think without a good script, you're screwed. So I vote.
Yeah.
So
you don't think there's enough improvisation that could save it?
No, I mean I think that's the downfall of an improvised. I think there are films that have been done with really good improvisation, but I think they had to have a good script and a director who had a vision for which way to go with the improvising. Otherwise, you're going to become so, off topic that it's really not going to relate to the rest of the story. So I think you have to have a good script to have good improvisation in it.
Yeah,
personally.
And secondly, I don't think any actor that's getting paid or trying to have a successful career should be resting on their laurels for any part, no matter how well it's written. They should be doing the best they can.
Don, you have a comment on that?
I agree.
Well, I just think that you get a good script, you can get a lousy script and great actors, and maybe pull it out. And if you have the right director that understands improvisational workings, that's fine. That's great. But you really should have something nailed down pretty good. And if you get a director who is, his ego is out there and he's tough and he wrote it, and now he's not going to change a comma, I think you got a problem. But if he allows the actor who he hired in the first place, and let's face it, a good script is 90% casting, if not more.
Yes.
And you get that cast working, and you allow them to spread their wings a little bit, you can come off with something pretty doggone nifty. You can get away with a soft focus shot. You can get away with a couple of mistakes and stuff like that, but you really need somebody on that book that knows what they're doing.
Well, Don, we also talked about in a past show when it comes in regards to script writing for televisions and movies. There's a definite difference. And I wanted your opinion on this as well.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about the fact that when you're writing for television, you actually know the actors you're writing for pretty much when you get into a series? So wouldn't that be a little easier, or do you think that wouldn't matter?
I think it's not easier or harder, Jim. I think the deal is you have actors that you know, and you know what they can do, you know their limits, and you know their faults and so forth, and that's fine. And that can dictate some of your writing for them. However, it's harder to come up with new ideas and fresh ideas sometimes with actors that you've already lived with for 12, 13 weeks, and all of a sudden you're saying, well, wait a minute, now what can I do with them to make it interesting, And so you have that conflict constantly. If you're dealing with brand new folk, and you are, come to terms with Joe Dokes, who is new and he's fresh, and I think, they have to bend to the script, but as far as a writer is concerned, I think you got to be open to everybody's input.
Well, on the other flip side of that as well, oftentimes I've noticed in television series when you're looking at the credits that the writers change. So
are you talking about television?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm. So does that affect the performance of the actor? I'm just curious.
Well, it depends on the series. If you're doing Mork and Mindy, and you've got 10 writers on staff,
okay,
you got Robin Williams, who is he's a Looney Tune. I mean, he's out there in left field, which is wonderful for the acting and coming up with bits that seem to work. And of course, they overshoot. So that when you get into the editing room, instead of the script that says, well, this bit is going to take 20 seconds, he may go on for 2 minutes. Mm-hmm. And so in the editing room, you've got to find ways to cut that back down to make the necessary 22 minutes for the show. Mm-hmm. Now, as far as the writer is concerned, to your question, you've got 10 writers, maybe more, and through the series, everybody gets a shot at a script, maybe 2 scripts. So that's why you'll see different writers, because one of the 10 gets a shot at this show, and one of the other 10 get a shot at the other part of the series. So they mix it up.
Okay.
And everybody gets a shot at residuals,
mm-hmm.
which is
that's good.
Which is what everybody wants, of course.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why.
I'd rather work on the back end.
Yeah. Oh, no, the back end is what a series. Yeah, Bobby, but that's what the series is about. Is the back end and getting it.
I agree.
Yeah.
Well, I have a question for Jocelyn. Then I'm going to ask Bobby pretty much the same question. When it comes to writing for a movie, do you have someone in mind when you're writing that script? I mean, even if you don't end up using that actor, do you have someone in mind in a portrayal of that role when you're writing it?
Yeah, I did for my script. I had I didn't even put myself in the script right away in terms of writing for myself. I imagined another actor because I was worried that I would feel too intimidated to write certain difficult scenes if I thought I was I was scared I was going to limit myself, thinking, oh, can I pull off doing this scene? So I thought of an actress that I admired and wrote the scene for her, and then, brought it back around to myself when it actually came up to doing it. But and then for the father character, I was inspired by an actor, it was just very helpful.
And Bobby, what about you when you write?
Well, when I'm writing for a show, I'm trying to plan out my number of shows that I'm going along to create a story. And once I get that storyline that I'm trying to work towards, I break down each show into different segments of that story. So as opposed to writing a feature film script, I'm trying to get it all across in one piece of work.
But do you visualize certain people in the roles when you're writing?
Yeah,
or oh, you do?
Yes, actually. Well, I'd like to, because it makes my job a lot easier instead of doing it wholesalely. Mm-hmm. And what I've actually done is I'm getting involved in a new film right now that I hired a director and a writer to write the part specifically for the actors that I wanted inside of the series.
Okay.
So my three main leads, I'm having the role created around them, as opposed to sticking them in down the road.
Okay.
So I'm executive producing it myself, so I had that option.
Yeah.
So yes.
I had one note on trying to visualize an actor for your, say, screenplay, and part of that's good, and part of it's not. If you have any power in this business, and you can go to, say, Warner Brothers, and they say, well, who do you have in mind for this particular role? And you name that person. I really have this person in mind. Oh, okay, fine. And you wrote the script around that persona, and you say, yeah. And they say, we're sorry to tell you, the guy died. So, there are elements, and all of a sudden you say, wait a minute, I got to go back and restructure another person. So there's dangers of putting all your marbles into an actor's basket when...
No, I agree totally. And as you just said, the only time I would like to do that if I have the option is if I have total control over the project. Mm-hmm. And if they die along the way, then I got a problem.
Well,
rewrite.
I mean, you could die along the way too, God forbid. And then the script just...
You want to keep it open to perception from a varied number of actors. I agree with you.
Well, it's another thing too. Is if and I agree that you got to have something to hang your hat on. You got to have something that, as Jocelyn said, she was careful about not putting herself in there too quickly, and I think that's right. You got to know your limitations for that particular role, or if you're building a building, or if you're doing whatever you're doing, you got to know what you can do and what you can't, right?
But what helped with Jocelyn, for instance, is what was great is that she said she did not see herself in the part,
right.
But then she played the part. But the great thing is she knew that character, mm-hmm. So that actually helped.
So that's a plus.
Yeah.
Jocelyn, is that right?
I knew that I was going to play the part. I just didn't want to envision myself while I was writing it because I was scared that I would limit the character by my own fears as an actor.
I see.
So I wrote it with an actress who I thought was very brave, and then made myself be very brave when it came down to acting in it.
Well,
and in my circumstance, I needed a piece of work that was more drama and thriller related. Uh-huh. So I went out and got a director, a guy named Glenn Ciano, who did Incubus with Robert Englund, and he just did Lucy's with Michael Madsen and Eric Roberts and so forth and so on. But the point being, I needed a dramatic role, and I had the ability to become the executive producer on it. So I hired the correct director, and I got the writer to write it where I'm going to have this head policeman's role and get this dramatic effect that I need for the industry. Instead of going to ask somebody else for the part, I'm going to create it myself.
Well, that's good. When you're the executive producer, you kind of get to call the shots.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say. When you can do it, it is good. So I had the opportunity, so that's how I chose to do it. So I'm having the role written basically for myself and the other couple of lead actors, and then we'll fill in the gaps around it.
Well, I'm going to cut in here and let Judy. Judy has another quote she'd like to read for us.
Gregory Hines once said, "I read the script, and I knew it was a good part. It was written for a white actor. That's what I'm up against. I have to try to make roles happen for me that aren't written black.
And how does everyone feel about that? Because I know that when we're writing, we do see people in our minds as we're writing and putting that on paper. And, you know, actually depending on your race, you're probably going to see someone within your own race as that actor. So what is the impact of that when it comes to writing?
I'll tell you what.
Well, me, myself, I believe that in the day and age that we live in now, you have to write about, you know, what's really happening. And I'll give you 2 words: Modern Family. The show is written around modern day organization of family life, and I think it's done very well. So as far as you know, the racial epithet, of course, black people for centuries have been fighting against slavery and wondering what's going to be written for them and available for them, whether it be in television, print, or otherwise. So that's always a struggle for them. So it's good to.
What about you, Don? Well, Judy wanted to cut in on that as well.
Well, Bobby, I wanted to mention, though, there's been a big change. If you watch television, Tyler Perry has a series that's on. In the movies, black movies are #1 in the box office. I think.
No, I agree. Now they are, yes. But I understand what he said, and that Gregory Hines.
Yeah, what Gregory Hines says what he's referring to.
Many years ago, when he was trying to find his way through the industry, and it was very hard for him to find roles. That's why he said that are written black.
And Don, what were you going to say about that?
This is going back to the Saved by the Bell era. When they were first casting, they went through all the characters: Paul Gosselaar and Mario Lopez and a few others, and Dustin Diamond, who played Screech, and all that. I mean, you know, it was a kid's show, and everybody was, you know, very excited because it was a new trend at NBC. Brandon Tartikoff, who's not with us anymore, but he and Peter Engel came up with this idea for the teenage to replace the cartoons that were, and it turned out to be a big hit. It was, you know, people later on said, yeah, it was kind of campy, kind of silly, kind of, you know, whatever. But on the original casting, the part of Lisa, the princess, was supposed to be a white Jewish princess. And so somewhere along the lines, the casting people got it messed up, and pretty soon it was time for the girls to come in and audition for Lisa. And Lark Voorhees walked in the door. She's a little black actress. And Peter Engel said, "That's her." And everybody said, "What are you talking about? It's supposed to be a Jewish princess. What are you talking about?" He said, "That's her. Make her a black princess." And it worked. And from then on, it was like, okay. And Peter had a sense of casting that was pretty phenomenal. And so the role of a black and white it changed in about a matter of a half a second.
But you know, and I think even in Hollywood today, this still plays true, in that most parts, you know, are written for a white actor when it comes to a lot of the scripts. And then I think until you actually see someone audition, it's hard to visualize someone else playing that part.
Well, nobody envisioned, nobody had that vision at all. It just said she walked in the door and it was Buffo. You know, it was like instant sale. So,
Judy is going to read us one more quote.
Once we got the show on the air, everyone except Maury Amsterdam pretty much stuck to the script. That was said by Dick Van Dyke from the Dick Van Dyke Show.
And I think Don had the same shared experience on Mork and Mindy.
Oh, gosh, it was like you didn't even know what was going to happen. You know, I mean, he did have the discipline, however, and like Maury, I think he had the discipline to say the right words to make the show work, make the story work, not the show, the story. And funny, and then let the editors go in there and kibitz around and try to make some sense.
I would like to have everyone's their vantage point on this, as far as how important is it to stick to the script, even when it comes to writing a movie. I mean, do they really need to stick? Jocelyn, what do you think about that?
Sorry, do you need to stick to the script?
Right. I mean, because you wrote your movie IMI. Was it important for you that everyone pretty well stick to the words written, or did you allow some liberty?
I allowed conversations about it before we did it. You know, we didn't have a lot of time to rehearse, or and the shooting schedule was really tight. So there was definitely conversation allowed, which I tried to have with actors before we were actually doing, shooting the scene. So if we had time to do it in rehearsal, but at the end of the day, a lot of the rhythm of the sentences, I wanted them to be a certain way. So, there was discussion and openness, but at the same time, I put a lot of thought into the writing, and I wanted it to be, I wanted everyone to stick to it.
Well, story is story, and if you lose your story, if you lose that little element that conveys what you, the writer, director, whomever, if you lose that story point, you're dead. I don't know if you agree or don't agree, but I don't think you can vacillate and get off track and then try to get back on because somebody cleverly says da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And you go, well, wait a minute, you're only 33 years old, get off the set. So... And actually that did happen. It happened on our shoot once where I allowed an actor to say something, and it seemed like it was fine, and it was just a little change, and it completely screwed up the story because of, the pronoun. They were referring to the wrong person. They didn't realize it.
But how
I didn't realize.
Were you able to convey that to them to where they understood and didn't give an argument about it and just stick to the script?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. All of the actors that I worked with were, very respectful of the process, and most of them were theater actors, and, the script is, it's the law.
Well, I'm going to read something that actually someone wrote who I think Jocelyn might know who it is, that pertains to exactly what we're talking about. And the quote is, because the one thing you know when you're shooting a script, and I've been on a lot of sets, is space is in a script, and the distance between the page and the stage is so enormous that it is unbelievable how even the brightest person can misread your intent or not see it all together. Scripts have air in themselves. Scripts are supposed to leave things up to interpretation, but people can misread things enormously. So sometimes it's just a matter of wanting to put on the screen what you had in mind. This quote is from Robert Towne. And I think what he's saying is that the director is really the one who's going to interpret the way that script is written. So he's going to direct it in a certain way. But if you take too much away from what's written, then you're taking away from what the entire story's about. Is that pretty much what he's saying?
It seems that that's what he's saying, yeah.
Well, but you got a power thing going on here. You got Robert Towne, who wrote Chinatown, and tons of other movies that are of quality and are well received, money makers, and so forth. He's got power, and then he turns it over to who was it? The director for Chinatown turns Roman Polanski,
right?
He turns it over to Roman, and Roman's got his own. Now listen, I've dealt with Roman, and the guy's got his own way of thinking, and he's got his own way of doing things. And he doesn't care who he's working with. So now you got two power brokers. Now you got Jack Nicholson, who's another guy who can get pretty much what he wants. So you got these three powerhouses on the set at the same time trying to figure out the space in the script and what's important to sell. Now, most of those guys, most of those people on most big major movies, in my opinion, have the quality in them to suck out the unneeded space and fill it with the proper emotions that will make it live. That's my take on it.
All right, I'm going to cut in here for just a minute and let our listeners know you're listening to Aspects of Writing with me, your host, James Kelly, here on KLAV 1230 on the AM dial. And you can also find us on KLAV1230am.com on your computer. My guests today are Bobby Vigeant.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. And Jocelyn Towne, Don Lewis Barnhart, and Judy McFadden. I have a series of questions I'd like to ask my guests regarding today's subject, writing for television and movies. And Jocelyn, I'm going to start with you. I'd like to start with what inspires you to write? What is your inspiration, for instance, the story that you just finished?
I was inspired by several different things, but one of them was a very early childhood memory of listening to, on records, the music from The Man of La Mancha, which I loved, and which is inspired by Don Quixote. And I always loved this quixotic character who was dreaming the impossible dream and trying to live life not as it is, but as it should be. And so I took sort of that character and reimagined him as a war veteran who was trying to right the wrongs of his past, between his wife and his child, and gave him the opportunity to do that with his daughter. So that was the inspiration for that story, and I also it's a love story. It's a platonic love story, but I've always loved star-crossed, lovers and quirky relationships. So that was, a story like Harold and Maude, for instance. So all those different factors kind of measured into this, to what, inspired me for this story.
But where did you come up with the idea to make a scenario of the daughter portraying the mother to become closer to the father? Where did that come from?
That comes from the Man of La Mancha. He believes that Aldonza, the street whore, is a princess or is his lady in waiting, and he renames her Dulcinea. So I said, well, what if it's not a stranger, but what if it's his daughter? And instead of thinking that it's his daughter, he thinks it's his wife. So it really came exactly.
It just progressed, huh?
Yeah. So that's where it came from.
So, Bobby, would you agree that you had mentioned earlier that we pretty much our inspiration comes from everyday life? So, that's pretty much the way you create as well, I assume.
Well, I believe so. I think that's in front of the camera, behind the camera, in the writing room. I think a lot of the emotion that we experience inspires us to write in different genres. If I felt something in my life, even as an actor in front of a camera, you want to take from what you've lived and draw that inside you, and then you try to translate it in the emotion you're portraying on film. And I would imagine that we're doing the same thing behind the camera and relying on the actors in front to translate that for us.
Well, I'm going to actually ask Don. Don, what is an important thing or a lesson you can tell us about writing a script for television from a director's vantage point? What would you...
Uh-oh, am I up?
You're up. You're the program.
Gee, I was taking a little snooze there. I'm sorry. Repeat the question, please.
I said, Don. What is the importance of...
Huh?
How old are you,
I'm 33.
Bobby, don't ask.
I'm nosing on...
I woke him up. He's okay now.
I'm nosing on 74, Bobby.
That's great. You sound 50. How's that?
Huh?
He said you sound 50.
You sound 50.
God bless you.
All right, so Don, what's the importance of writing for a script from the director's vantage point? What are you looking for?
Well, I'm looking for the honesty of the scene.
Okay.
I'm looking for the truth, and I'm looking for actors who can give it.
But are you also looking for the writer to give you an essence of what that character is? Because like we were talking about, you have to sustain that character week after week after week.
Well, if you're talking a series, that's one thing.
Right.
And if you're talking a series, you better cast it well because, there are so many, unfortunately, Jocelyn, and Bobby, I hate to, cut into your craft. But as you well know, there are a lot of phonies and fakers and posers out there that want to be actors that can't make it, but they get lucky and they get a series and, they get a series, they're on it, and they hold up for a while, and all of a sudden the armor starts to split, and you see it. You can see it on camera, and you see the eyes. And I always watch for eyes. I don't care who it is. I don't care what kind
They're the windows to the soul, Don.
Well, yes.
The stories.
Yes, they are, Bobby, and you got that right. And you can watch them because you're in the booth or you're in a monitor or you're watching a close-up and you see the eyes lie. Mm-hmm. And you go, well, how am I going to fix this? So you go, you go through the routine and you get the actors aside and you have a little conversation. But what I look for is somebody that's going to portray that particular line that the writer took a lot of time to write, because you don't write these things overnight. Sometimes you have to, but the point being is that you write the script, and then that actor's job is to portray that truth, that honesty, and it's very difficult for an actor to sit in a trailer and wait to come on and do his part, and then come in and blow it. And you say,
and that's what makes the difference between a great actor and a mess actor, when they can draw from that emotion, and when they say go on, they can give you what you're looking for that makes your work so important.
Yeah, right, Bobby. But then you got another problem. You got another problem because you're dealing. What we were talking about here has a little smattering of drama. Drama. But now when you get into the comedy side of it, that's a whole different bag. Because
that's why I love comedy.
He does love comedy, yeah.
Yeah, well, that's why my background has been that way and I write funny. That. Yeah, I write funny, and I at least I try to.
You are funny, Don.
You're
you know something, funny. You know something, Ying.
Yes, Yang.
That was beautiful, Judy.
Yeah, she's great. That's why she's here. She's a funny lady. Anyway, so I just look for the truth of things and. A lot of times I'm disappointed, but you just go on and do the best you can, and the producer will come to you, and cause, they're not dumb people, and they'll say to us guys or ladies who are directing, why in the editing room, why did you let him get away with that one? Uh-huh. Well, now your job is on the line a bit too, because now you're saying you're letting him get away with stuff, and you've lost your credibility. So, there's a fine line of being tough about something, and there's a fine line of being, what do you call it, benevolent to the actor's choice, if that makes any sense. I just got thrown off a bit. I'm sorry.
Well, I'm going to, if you don't mind, Don, I'm going to let Judy talk a little bit about her writing experience, and we're going to talk about that.
I hope so, because I'm tired.
Go back to sleep, Don.
My God,
but you're only 33.
Talk about you. I didn't know what I was doing.
I'm going back to sleep, Bobby, for just a brief second until I'm nudged.
Okay,
I'll nudge you right off the chair.
Oh, I know you will, darling.
Well, James, I didn't actually write a script, but I worked very closely with an award-winning independent filmmaker. Even wrote a few scenes. Mm-hmm. So I sort of got into it.
But what was that experience like for you?
It was very hard for me because unless you can find someone who's read your book and can get the characters, and I wrote about a dog, and he did have personality and character. And this person did not capture it. I really haven't even tried to sell the screenplay. It was a work for hire, and it's I can change it or do whatever I want to do with it.
Well, who can give us advice here on the panel about what do you look for? When you're looking for someone to help with the script as far as getting it finished. I know, Don, you wrote your own, so you really didn't look for a script writer. Bobby, I don't know about you, and Jocelyn, I know you wrote your own script, but I know your uncle is the big guy in Hollywood when it comes to script writing, Jocelyn. So what advice could you give someone like Judy who's trying to get their script done?
Well, I turned to a local film network organization, the state organization, and your local network to find some support and to make more connections to find the right people to help. That's one of the things I would do.
All right. And Jocelyn?
I mean, that's a very particular situation, so I'm not exactly sure how to answer it, but I know that when I was a reader for some directors, I just read, hundreds of scripts, and when you see something that clicks, when you see someone's work that clicks and that's really truly good, then you found something. So I think it just takes a lot of reading of people's work to find, someone who you think would actually be a good fit for your material.
So what you're basically saying is research who's going to write your script for you. Learn something about them first.
That's what I thought. Yeah. That's what I thought I had done. But I also think James and Dawn, you are dog lovers. I mean, I know that. Mm-hmm. And my book is about a dog. I think you would have to have someone who really felt an affinity to dogs and really could in other words, I'm sorry, Bobby, go ahead.
Hello?
Pardon me?
Yeah.
No. Good, yeah.
Are you drinking, Bobby?
No, I don't even drink.
Well, start. Start.
Well, I'm going to take a minute here, and I'm going to ask each person to give me a little bit about where they can find more out about your work. So, Judy, I'm going to start with you. Where can we learn more about Life with McDuff? Well,
Life with McDuff is on my website, www.lifewithmcduff.com. And it's at Barnes & Noble, in libraries. I just saw WorldCat, which is a library, international library system. It's in 100 library systems. And so you can just get it pretty much at the libraries or at the bookstores.
And Don, what about you and your books?
Well, my books are on Amazon and Kindle. They are also on my website, which I have sold a total of, wow, this is this. I'm sorry you put me on the spot.
You don't have to take your shoes off.
You don't have to tell how many.
No, Bobby, I sold 15. Okay, are you happy now?
Yeah.
Anyway, my website is Don Lewis Barnhart.
And make sure it's Don Lewis.
Lewis. My son is a stand-up comic, and he goes by Don Barnhart, so I threw my middle name in. Anyway, DonLewisBarnhart.com is my website, so you can get these synopsises on there and figure out if you want to buy the book or not.
And how about you, Bobby?
Great.
Where can they learn more about your work?
Well, two addresses. One would be VIGLifestyle.com. That's my health, fitness, and life wellness website. Or easily on Facebook. I have about 11 pages, so it would just be facebook.com/Bobby, Vigeant, Vigeant.
Okay, and Jocelyn, and where can they learn more about your work?
You can go to the film's website, which is IMI the Film at it's just IMIthefilm.com.
Okay. All right, I'm going to go ahead and go into the last minutes of the show. Next week, we're going to return with a live show. The topic will be Writing for Music Part 2. We're going to explore the techniques of writing songs and what it takes to get your songs published. And I believe Sandy Castell has agreed to join me on the air with that show. My guest will be also Brenda L. Howard, and she's a singer-songwriter from Michigan. Sandy Castell and I are going to be co-hosting a new show starting July 10th titled Behind the Scenes with Sandy Castell and James Kelly. The idea behind the show is to offer an in-depth look at what it takes to get some of Las Vegas' biggest shows on the stage. And then we also intend to go behind the scenes of some movies or whatever else is happening that is worth talking about. We may even go behind the scenes of a few motion pictures and take a little in-depth look at the movies themselves, and I think I can convince Jocelyn into divulging the madness, mayhem, and joys of producing her film, and maybe Don when his is ready to get off the ground.
I'm sorry?
Wake up, Don. Wake up.
Were you talking to me?
I forgot to nudge him first.
Bless you.
You can find links and information about all my guests on Aspects of Writing website at www.aspectsofwriting.com. For the next 2 weeks, Aspects of Writing will broadcast live at 2 o'clock p.m. Pacific Standard Time here on KLAV and on the internet at www.klav1230am.com. Keep in mind we rebroadcast every Wednesday on VegasAllNetRadio.com at 8 o'clock p.m. Pacific Standard Time. You can also view us on video here in the studio on KLAV on YouTube immediately after this broadcast. Just go to YouTube and enter Aspects of Writing with James Kelly. For future air dates and lineups, you can go to the computer and log on to Aspects of Writing. Please sign our guest book while visiting the Aspects of Writing website. You can post questions or comments on our guest book page as well, or email us directly at aspectsofwriting@yahoo.com. That's aspectsofwriting@yahoo.com. Does anyone have anything to add before we go off the air?
Well, I just wondered, is YouTube, is that the thing that goes in a tire?
No. Wake up, Don. Wake up. Wake up.
I like that. That
it's
was
the internet.
A pleasure, actually.
It's been nice to meet both of you. Yeah.
Likewise.
All right.
My pleasure to everyone.
Thank you, Jocelyn. Thank you, Bobby. And thank you, Judy and Don.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank you for listening to Aspects of Writing here on KLAV. This is your host, James Kelly, reminding you, if you can dream it, you can write it.